All right, pre-algebra kiddos, today is day 2 of the distributive property. So again, we are going to review how to simplify the algebraic expressions using the distributive property, and then here pretty soon we're going to play matho. So let's get started. Now, on the outside here, we have a 5, and then parentheses, we have 1 minus b. So I'm going to take the 5, and remember we're always going to distribute to the far left term first. So I'm going to take 5 times 1. So 5 times 1. Bring down my minus sign. And then we're going to take 5 times b. 5 times b. Notice that I've used parentheses. If that parentheses kind of messes you up, feel free also just to use the 5 times 1 minus 5 times b. It's totally up to you, but I'm going to stick to the parentheses just for now. So I'm going to have, when I start simplifying this out, 5 times 1 we know is 5. We'll bring down our minus sign, and then 5 times b. There's no actual real operation that I can do here other than just to smush those two together. So hopefully we see 5 times b is just 5b. And then our last step, if we can add these two things together, so I have a 5 and then minus 5b. Well, hopefully we can see that these are not like terms because one of them has a b and one of them does not. Therefore, this actually 5 minus 5b is our final answer for number 1. If you would like to put this in standard form and have the b first, if you want to switch those around, that's fine, but your teacher is going to be a-okay with this 5 minus 5b answer. So again, take note, we did that 5, we distributed it to the 1 first, like as when we're reading a book. We have to go to the far left term, and then work our way to the right for that question 1. All right, question 2. For question 2, we have a negative on the outside, and then parentheses a plus 1. So let's go ahead and brainstorm. What number do we think we can put right in here in between this negative and this parentheses? Hopefully we're thinking, well, if it's a negative and there's no number, hopefully we know to add in a negative 1, parentheses a plus 1, because it's kind of like I'm distributing a negative 1 when I'm distributing a negative. It's the same thing. So whenever you don't see a number, so if you want to make a little note for yourself, if you don't see a number to distribute, feel free to add in a 1. So put a 1. Alright, so then when I shove in that 1, I now have negative 1 parentheses a plus 1, so I'm going to distribute and distribute. So we get negative 1 times a. Sorry guys, I just could not see those colors anymore. So negative 1 times a, bring down that plus sign, then negative 1 times 1. Let's just go ahead and work it out. So negative 1 times a, Again, one's a number and one's a variable, so I'm just going to smush them together. So negative 1a. Then if I have plus a negative, I'm just going to bring down the plus for now, and then we'll kind of look at it. So here I have negative 1 times 1. So they're opposite signs or different signs, so we're going to have the difference sign. So negative, and then 1 times 1 is 1. Okay, but then here, whenever we have plus and minus right next to each other, we know that minus sign kind of trumps that plus sign. So we can rewrite this as negative 1a minus 1, but also remember back to the very beginning up here, we had negative parentheses. So if I have negative 1a, or if I just have negative a, I really am saying the same thing, because if I have 1a and I have a, that's still, I just have 1a. So this can be your answer. Or if you would like, you can kind of drop this 1 right here, because again, if you have 1a and just a, you have the same amount. So you can have this answer if that makes more sense to you, or you can write negative a minus 1. It is totally up to you. Okay, but this probably right here is probably not simplified enough, just because that minus or plus a negative. So make sure if you see plus and negative, a plus and a minus sign right next to each other, again, that minus sign trumps the plus sign. You don't really need that plus sign anymore. All right, and then let's move on to example 3. Okay, so now we have 3c minus 9 times negative 10. So again, this is kind of like I have the parentheses. So I have 3c minus 9. I could technically have parentheses negative 10, but that would get a little confusing because then you would just have, it would look something like this, 3c minus 9 all in parentheses to negative 10, but we would think that that's probably a minus sign, right? So instead, we go ahead and put in that times a negative 10, but it's the same principles. So again, I'm going to take this negative 10, I'm going to distribute it all the way to this far left term first. Then I'm going to take the negative 10, I'm going to distribute it to the far right term. So we get negative 10 times 3c. Let's bring down our big minus sign. Then we have negative 10 times 9. All right, so hopefully we're good so far. All we did was just write out what our distribution was so far. So I'm just going to start multiplying out, order of operations. So negative 10 times 3c. I know that here, yeah, they're not like terms. You see, one's a number, one's a variable. But again, it's kind of like there are 3 terms here because I could technically split up that 3 and that c. So really, because there are 3 terms here, I'm going to multiply those 2 numbers together. So negative 3, so again, whenever there's a times right here, we can multiply those numbers out. So negative 10 times 3 is negative 30. It's like times c, but again, here we would just smush that together, kind of like how it was for the 3c. So I'm just going to write negative 30c right there. Okay, so again, I'm going to discuss that. I could, from this original problem, I could split up that 3 and that c with a multiplication sign. So I'm actually going to rewrite that just so that we can see it a little bit easier. So we get negative 10 times 3 times c. Because we know 3c is the same as 3 times c. Okay, and so then here again, it's like I could multiply these 2 together. So that's how we got that negative 30 times c. But one more time, we don't really need that multiplication sign. Let's just smush them together. Okay, and then we're going to simplify this side over here. So negative 10 times 9 would be, or, see, notice in math you can do things in whatever order you'd like. So here, if you see this minus a negative right next to each other, feel free to go ahead and make that a plus sign. But when you do make that a plus sign, now you are not going to use this stuff anymore. You are just looking at the 10 times 9 because 10 times 9 is now 90. Okay, so here, if I were to have multiplied that out before, so negative 10 times 9, it would have been negative 90, but then still I would have had this minus sign. So minus a negative still gives you that plus. So either way, whether you do minus a negative first, or if you multiply out negative 10 times 9, you're still going to end up with that positive 90 as your answer for that expression. But then here, this entire answer would end up being negative 30c. Plus 90. All right, so hopefully we feel good with this algebraic expressions rather than just the numbers from yesterday's notes. So good luck on your problems tomorrow.